what are some things that people can do so that they are getting that feedback and it is part of their everyday life?
I think what's most important is to invite the feedback, right? Like we used to say that to leaders, like you asking for the feedback
Hmm.
means that you're showing like, I want to talk about what's not working. Please tell me. And the more you show up for that, show that you can handle it, right? And there's not the defensiveness, there's not the, oh, now I have feedback for you, all of the like bad things that shut down feedback.
Right. Right.
I think it's the ability to invite it, take it in, apply it if it, or even if it feels like it's not applicable to have a grown up, mature conversation about it. Think how little that actually happens in families for the most part. Certainly
Oh,
when
it's
you get
hard. It's hard. I know that's like if you were to ask my wife, one of the things that she thinks is frustrating about living with me is there are times where I'm really, really good about taking in the feedback, and there are times where it's not
la
great.
la la.
Yeah. But it is really fucking hard. So, like,
Yeah.
I wonder if there are best practices and things that organizations, world class organizations, have done so that other people that have never worked there can apply that to their lives.
I think it's important from the get go in any relationship or organization to say feedback, talking like feedback, talking about what's not working matters.
Hmm.
It's important. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Humans are wired for connection, so feedback conversation is really hard, but we have to talk about it, right? Because otherwise, things don't get fixed.
Today's conversation is about something that we all say we want, but we rarely practice consistently, and that's giving and receiving honest feedback. Not the kind that lives in a performance review or leadership books, but the kind that shows up in our everyday conversations at home, at work, and in those quiet moments when it would be much easier to stay silent. My guest today is Tré Wright. She's spent years working at the intersection of leadership, culture, and people development, including a long tenure at Netflix during a period where the feedback culture became a reference point for the industry. Today, she works as a coach, helping leaders, managers, and individuals navigate change, identity, and the uncomfortable growth that comes from self awareness. In today's conversation, we talk a lot about why feedback is so hard, how leaders can invite it without defensiveness, what world class organizations get right and wrong about culture, and how identity shapes the way we show up at work and in our life. We also talk about job transitions, fear, community, and what it means to keep choosing growth when the world feels heavy. I'm really excited to present my conversation with Tré. Let's get it. Welcome to Life Between Titles. I'm your host, Savan, and today I've got my friend Tré with me. Tré, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. A little nervous. This is my first time doing a conversation like this, so be kind.
No worries.
Just kidding.
This should be a fun conversation. Ray, before we get started, it looks like it's super sunny where you live compared to the rainy flood weather that we have here in Washington. Whereabouts in the country are you?
I am in sunny Burbank, California. So yes, it is
Nice.
like this most days.
Yeah, I have a friend that lives down there, and I know that when we talked initially, we covered Burbank a little bit, but there's a big horse community there. Isn't that right? Equestrian, is that what it's called?
Yes. Yes, a huge equestrian center, over like back behind where Disney Studios are. It's beautiful.
Yeah, do you know the deal behind that? Like, what's the history around that?
You know what? I don't. I just know that that's like one of the like the older neighborhoods, between Warner Brothers. There was a lot of production and filming that went
Yeah.
over here. There also used to be Burbank was for a long time a lot of orchards before Lockheed came in World War II, and so um, yeah, I think it's just always been that, and so people move to that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um, it's great because you're like I ride my bike down there, and you'll get to the
Yeah.
crosswalks. and you have your normal one for the bike, and then you have one for people who are up on the horse, so they can cross the street, which is awesome.
Is that like a common sight over there, or is it pretty rare, or what is that
Uh,
like?
I haven't seen that before, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I loved living in that area just because there's such a crazy amount of energy, but also it just feels like it's old Hollywood in some ways. I don't know if it's old Hollywood or new Hollywood, but just the vibe of the area is amazing every time I go there. How long have you lived down there?
We've been on this part of LA for 10 years.
Okay.
So we moved over here after my daughter was like about 3 or 4. We lived in closer to Paramount. Strangely enough, we live close to studios. Um, but there's lots of green space and wider
Yep.
streets and things. So we're like, okay, it's time to move to the valley.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Trey, you sent me some information about yourself. And one of the things that you told me was you either were born in the South or grew up in the South. What part of the country were you born in?
I'm northern Florida. So Jacksonville is where I was born and raised.
Gotcha. Gotcha. How was that time being raised there?
Um, look, I try to avoid stereotypes of the South, but
Okay.
my high school was Robert E. Lee Senior High School.
Mhm.
So, we had um the Confederate flag on like one of our yearbooks. And
Wow.
so the South does have its stereotypes for a reason. It's just not everybody fits those stereotypes. But you know what? I graduated from Florida State. And after I graduated, maybe stayed in Florida for like one more year. And then I moved to Atlanta, which is still the South, but a big city. So
Yeah. Yeah. What made you move to Atlanta? By the way, Atlanta is one of my top favorite cities in the world. I just feel like every time I go there, I have a great time. But what made you want to move there?
Um, you know what? The Olympics were coming there, so I thought that was awesome. And also when you are gay in the South, young and gay,
Yeah.
it's not, it's a fairly
Yeah.
conservative place. And there's usually a few cities that are like the more progressive meccas, and so Atlanta was
Hmm.
like the San Francisco of the South. And so it was like, go there, you're gonna find community, it's gonna
Yep.
feel more inclusive. And so yeah, I was there for about 8 years. I really liked it. Met my partner there. She moved out to California. I came like maybe a year later, and we've been here since. I don't think we planned to necessarily be out here for this long, but California has a way of keeping people here. So
What made you pick Burbank? I mean, I think about the cities in California with, diversity and, you know, different types of people from different parts of the world. Burbank wouldn't be the first place I'd choose. How did you guys choose that?
it's a great point, and I would say Burbank used to be that way. But we have family who
Okay.
who live over here, and so it was great to be close to them. I agree with you. Like Burbank, would not have been that place. And I would say when the big real estate boom happened and people got priced out of LA, a
Hmm.
lot of people came to like Burbank, to Glendale. And so if you go to like, we have like a local park near us, definitely a much more different makeup of young families than what it was like 10 years ago, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I went to school at Occidental for a year before dropping out and trying to get rich real quick before that failed miserably. But I felt like the types of people that are in that area are very interesting because you've got the movie industry, which is pretty big down there, but you also have people that are in tech. I think Snapchat is around that area. What was it like, uh, as a young professional living in that area and trying to start a business or do these types of things that you wanted to do?
Sure. Well, the great thing about Burbank is it's a very old neighborhood.
Yeah,
Really
yeah.
got, I think, fully established when Lockheed came here, and a lot of these neighborhoods were built out in support of the labor force for that. So we have families around us. They're like second generation
Mhm.
in their house, or they've lived there for like 50 years. So it's a really interesting makeup of who has Christmas decorations, who has Hanukkah, like, um, down t like, this little area, Magnolia, Burbank,
Mhm.
go down there, Magnolia, it's really mix young people there every Saturday, um, so and it's a great mix of a neighborhood. In terms of starting my business, I would say a lot of that was still very much, founded in the network that I established, at Netflix. So I was there for, like, 15 years and during a high growth period. And so lots of people I know from there. So it was a little bit more about starting the business for the people that I already knew.
Got it. Got it. I would love to dive into your time at Netflix at some point in the show. We don't have to do it just yet, but they've been making waves by acquiring Warner Brothers too. And I just, or I think they acquired them. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, yeah, well, they're the dramatic. You know what? When my cat is trying to join in
Yes,
the
do it. Bring your cat in. I love
come
it.
here, bugger. Okay. Oh, you have a cat too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this
Yeah.
is him.
Oh, that's such a cutie.
Yes, I'm gonna put him down though because he'll hog the camera if he can.
Yeah. I love it.
The latest twist in drama is that Paramount actually came back and is doing trying to do a hostile offer directly to Warner Brothers stakeholders this morning,
Wow.
which is like, yeah, which is wow, okay. Um, so yeah, it was pretty cool to see that. I think I did like a little post up on LinkedIn, but the
Yeah.
idea of being there when, they were fighting it out with Blockbuster and buying DVDs, and Warner Brothers was like that big 800-pound gorilla, right, when it came to, you weren't gonna get them to do much of anything that you wanted because they were so huge, right? And so it is a little mind-blowing. I live down the street from Warner Brothers too. So, I was telling my daughter about it. She was like, "So that's going to be a Netflix?" And I was like, "We'll see,"
Yeah.
because she knows me from, like, early Netflix going to, like, when it was a small office over in Beverly Hills, then to
Hmm.
a big building in LA, and then now that, and so, it's mind-blowing to her, and I have so much more of a deeper understanding, right, of what that means. There's significance of it, right?
I'm always interested in how kids, specifically our kids, describe what we do for a living. I know my daughter, she all she knows is that dad works at the Pentagon or he worked at the Pentagon and
Mhm.
now he's unemployed and I spend time with her. But how does your daughter describe what you do?
Well, so when I was at Netflix to begin with, I did content operations. When you say that to people, anybody outside of, marketing or streaming will go. And so I would try to explain to her, we take the movies from the studios who make them and we put them through. And so you see them on the site. Very like simple way. Right? What was really funny is when I would go to her preschool with her, um, I would have like these little, notebooks that had Netflix on it. And I remember one time sitting there and I had left that sitting on the table while I went to do something and came back and one of her little friends was like, "Can you watch Netflix on that?" Like, then they just saw the logo and I was like, no, but that's, really funny.
Yeah.
Um, but then I moved into HR, my last 5 years there, and that she could understand a little bit more, right? Because it was you think about it, a good bridge from going into coaching. So I'm like, "Well, here's my job. I help people.
Hmm.
I work with these people this way," and she also understood the hard part. She's like, "Oh, so do you help people, like, fire people?" And I'm like, "Yes."
Yeah.
So she kinda learned some of those more, nuanced parts of what it means for people to work and
Yeah.
hired by all of those different parts. So now the coaching piece, she actually can kinda get that more because you say coach, and she has teachers and, choral directors, and so for her, she's like, "Oh, okay, I get that a little more."
How did you go from content operations to HR? I feel like there's a step that I'm missing there. What was that step?
Um, I think it's something that was, unique to happening within Netflix. I'm not sure that it's not like it's been done before, people shifting from the business into HR. But, I think because Netflix had this very specific culture, so I spent first 10 years acquisitions, DVD operations into streaming operations, everything from building out, like, account managers with the studios to building out the digital pipeline for localization and QC and everything to support originals. I
Mhm.
even started the very first small iteration of the post-production group. I knew
Wow.
nothing about post, but that's actually kind of reflective of Netflix too. It's just like we only have a few like titles and you know what the business needs, so go hire somebody, right?
Mhm.
After a year, I was like, "Take somebody else take that." Like, that's a really, really that's a really hard part of the world, uh, you know, entertainment world to manage. I you know, I had built out this, like, multifunction team,
Mhm.
and, like any big startup company, you hit inflection points of where generalist to specialist makes more sense, right? And so my group, along with some other product operation group, went through a reorg, and the way it kind of worked out, like the things that still remained in my scope, I was like, "Am I like still really excited about this? I have this amazing leadership team, but if I stick around, I kind of like that limits the way they grow." And I was like, maybe it's time for me to like look around or leave. And my boss at the time, I was reporting to the chief product officer,
Mhm.
and he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, let's think about this. You have this like very distinct voice in the culture in leadership," because I had been really active in leadership development, facilitating, seminars, or the like parts of the like leading at Netflix was like a program that all new leaders had to go through, and very much a voice of inclusion, like organizing ERGs. So I had this pretty strong presence externally too, a lot of like women in tech. And so it was, hey, you have this really unique value.
Mhm.
Let's figure like maybe there's other parts of the business. Because I would say the other value that I had to offer was that I knew how to start things from little and
Right.
build it up, right? Like I would incubate like post production. Let's start it, hand it off, start it, hand it off. And there was like, kind of a anxious week of what are we going to do? I don't know. And then the chief people officer said, "Have you ever thought about being an HR business partner?"
Mm.
And remarkably, it was like the thing that I actually thought was a really, really cool job because I
Mhm.
had amazing HR business partners and I liked what they did. They got to solve people problems, which is the thing I was most passionate about. And so she said, "Do you want, what do you think about being an HR business partner?" And I was like, I don't have a degree in that, or,
Yeah.
so like, I don't have that license to operate that machinery. And she was like, you don't, that's not what you need. She was like, sure, if you want to go get SHRM certified but we have employee legal, like people who know the law,
Right.
the business and you know the culture. And so, you know, there was like this built-in credibility of it's one thing if I come in as a very traditional HR person and I'm talking to, like the head of corporate operations and I'm giving him coaching and guidance. And if he looks at me and it's like, "Well, you actually haven't stood in my shoes before.
Right.
You don't know how hard it is." And it was like, "Well, no, I actually do and did." And so it was this like, okay, let's do that. And the reassurance was people were like, "Yes, that totally makes sense." Coming in with a lot of trust when you're an HR business partner, when most people are like, "Oh, HR's in the room." But
Mhm.
me coming in with this, again, voice of inclusion, very much, the Netflix culture was not easy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
for people who really believed in it, it was reassuring that to have an HR business partner who would keep leaders accountable, who could teach it, right? It was like this cultural competency that you had to, you know, um, learning curve get through really quickly to be successful in the Netflix leadership. And anyways, yeah.
No, I
So
I think that's amazing. Trey, back in the, I would say, oh gosh, maybe 2010s, maybe 2013. I can't remember when now. There was the Netflix manifesto that floated around the internet around the values and all that stuff. And I think I was at Amazon at the time and a couple other startups, but I kept on coming back to this manifesto of the values and the things that Netflix thought was important. And it was written very well. I can't remember who wrote it. It might have been like written by a team or maybe your CEO. But the thing that I do remember is the amount of people on Reddit or these other forums that would refer to this thing and say, like, yeah, this is the real deal. This is how Netflix is operated. And I would imagine it's helped with retention, recruiting, and all those other things. Like from your standpoint, when you were in HR, how did you guys reinforce these values that you guys had at Netflix? Like, what did that look like?
sure. Yeah, I want to just acknowledge real quick they had what they called the culture deck, and there were
Hmm.
like these core
Yes.
principles that
Yep.
they talked about: context, not control; freedom and responsibility.
Yes. Yeah.
But the
All rings
core
a bell now.
values,
Yep.
and that's actually why I wanted to go work at Netflix. When I read, it would say like honesty. You only say something to people's face. Like it was all these different. What does it mean to have integrity? And I had worked at a really political environment like the year before, which I hadn't really done before. I had been really lucky with the companies I worked with. And having been in this like very political, I didn't know like who to trust. And so I read these Netflix core values and I was like, I want to work there. It's a little daunting, a little scary, right? People are going to give you real time feedback. And I'm okay with that
Hmm.
because I'd actually rather know if the analogy, if I've got spinach in my teeth, please somebody tell me. Uh, but the core values, to I think, to give you the answer to your question, is they were integrated into everything. So Netflix had an annual 360 feedback process. Anybody in the company could give you feedback, even if you didn't ask them to. CEO, people, it was all in this app. You go in, you can give feedback to anybody. You ask people for feedback. In the beginning, it was just around those core values,
Hmm.
which was important, right? Because now you're talking about cultural understanding, cultural competency, the ability to keep each other accountable to this framework that we have signed up for. And in fact, when I was an HR, well, even as a leader and then HR business partner, when people would say, "Oh, I don't know how to give good feedback," or "I feel like I'm really like frustrated," and I'm like, "Okay, well, that's not the time to give feedback." And I'm like, if you're feeling unhappy about a situation and you walk away, there's probably one of the core values that you could tie back what you're having a reaction to. Like, so did you feel like the person wasn't showing up with passion, or there wasn't selflessness, like because you have a value and you'd have these different descriptors. And if you could frame feedback around one of those core values, then that had, it was a shared language. And now you had this more of an anchor to, oh, okay, what you were looking for was what's one of the other ones? Uh, Innovation, right?
Hmm.
So you felt like I was not offering a lot of new solutions, or you get what I'm saying. And
Right. Right.
so it was used in hiring, obviously, which had kind of a catch 22 because some people would over rely on culture fit and using that as a asking people to recite essentially like from memory what, tell me about selflessness, tell me a time you did. And that
Right.
wasn't necessarily helpful. Um, but yeah, it was used it was integrated into everything.
Interesting. Interesting. What was it about those sets of values that drew you in specifically? Were there like a handful that you just said that those reflect who I am at this point in my life, or was it more sort of generalities of like, generally speaking, I want to work at a place that's striving to be more inclusive, that's striving to be more innovative?
Sure, you know, and inclusion wasn't a core value yet. That didn't
Mm,
come until later. Um, it was honesty,
hmm.
but I wanted to be in a place. I'm very much a direct, like, no BS person, and
Yeah,
so let's
yeah.
talk it through. Um, Passion was one because it really was about loving what you do and bringing that energy to everything. Selflessness was super important to
Okay.
me, and it was like I remember one of the descriptors was, if you walking like, you pick up a piece of trash that you see, like, you know, it doesn't matter, you're CEO, there's a piece of trash sitting there in the hallway, you're gonna grab it, and the whole idea that you're thinking about the greater good, which very much appealed to me too,
Yeah,
and so, you know, this idea of, like, being in it, which I think anybody who's been in startups, like, that's one of the really meaningful parts of it. um, I'm here, like, I'm not it's not about me, it's about what's best for the business. All of that really appealed to me as a person. So it was very much values aligned with who I was and who I wanted to be.
I see. I see. Um, Trey, I want to take it back a couple years to you growing up in the South, because I feel like there's a lot of these experiences that you've had that have led you up to where you are now today of having this coaching business, working at Netflix. I think at one point you were maybe consulting for Crunchyroll. Like, these are some very high aspirational things that a lot of people, like, if they had a choice, they would have exactly sort of like what you have right now, working at these great places. But what was life for you like as a teenager in the South? And what were some of the things that got you excited, that you were passionate about?
Sure. Um, let's see. So when I was younger, I was really big into sports. I was an only child, so it's like I
Okay.
wanted to be out.
Okay.
Um, when I wasn't out playing sports or outside, I was inside listening to a lot of music. You know, music was like a really good companion. What was great about that is the different generations of music taste within my family. My
Hmm.
grandfather was into big band, my grandmother was into crooners, my mom was, you know, Beach Boys music, her name's Barbara Ann. So, um, and then my aunt, who had to be the antithesis of that, was into the Beatles, and, you know, and I grew up with all this really great, uh, music, and my first job was doing retail, right,
Okay.
like talking about, like, babysitting, you know, my first job was retail, and I actually really liked it. Like, I liked working with people, cash register. I find that I always say retail is the quickest way to teach you manners,
Oh
um,
yeah, for sure.
you know?
I worked at
Uh
Banana Republic for a while. I would highly recommend that to anybody to
yes,
build a lot of these skills.
yes, and, I did that going into college. Well, I'll say one thing, in high school, I was a big athlete,
Okay.
and,
What did you play?
I played soccer, like, growing up, um, and then when I got to high school, I did softball, I did golf, volleyball. Volleyball is actually the reason why I ended up changing from, like, a magnet middle school, like, a college prep, to a public high school because I actually really wanted to go play sports. I liked, again, coming back to that kind of, like, community, being with a lot of people.
Right.
Um, but, you know, being a teenager, I just was always involved with something. I think
Hmm.
because I didn't wanna, like, be home by myself, and, I often my mom worked, single mom, and so I often got myself adopted into different people's families just so I wasn't home much. You know, the other thing about growing up in the South, though, is I didn't come out, as gay and probably until college, as like a lot of people do.
Right.
But I had a few, like, I obviously, like, I had some sense, and, but in the South, and so 'cause I graduated high school in '87,
Mhm.
gay people still got beat
Mhm.
up then, and so there was a lot of just, like, being inauthentic,
Right.
right? Um, Even though when I came out later, people are like, "Yeah, I'm not surprised," and I'm like, "Say no more, we'll stop there."
Right.
Uh, I don't wanna know why how you put the dots together. Um, and then when I went to college, I got back into doing retail, and one day I was like, I love music. Like, I
Mhm.
had started doing some DJing, like, very, like, haphazard
Oh,
DJ.
like radio DJ or like going to a
No, no, no,
club?
no, no, like parties, like fraternity parties,
Oh,
or
okay.
and I was, like, mixtapes galore, right? Like, you see all those Gen X, memes about all the cassette
Yeah.
tapes, but I loved it, right? Like,
Yeah.
recording American Top 40 every Sunday and then making all those mixtapes. And it never occurred to me that I could go work in a music store, because I actually kinda thought, like, you needed to be a really deep music expert. And I just didn't give myself that in, so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna go apply part-time." And so I worked in this place called Turtles, a record
Okay.
bar, and they did video. They did videotape recording and then music. I I did part-time until I graduated from college with a international affairs degree that I don't know what I was gonna do with it. It sounded cool. I love sociology and history and everything, and I needed to pay my rent, and so they said, "Do you want full-time hours?" And I then spent, like, 10 years with that company, um, Blockbuster. It was like music retail was kinda like everything got eaten, right?
Yeah, for sure. I remember
Um,
that.
and anyways, worked for, Blockbuster, bought us. I always say retail too was my very first lesson in people leadership.
Mhm.
People don't get into retail because they make a lot of money. People get
Right.
into retail because they need to pay the bills, right? And so the idea that you're going to be able to motivate people, make them, you know, look forward to coming to work and dealing with customers, and but it was fun. Like, everybody who worked in the music store loved music. And so there was very much that passion. And I was in Atlanta working in music stores, Atlanta in the 90s, which
Yeah.
was like
Wow.
the center
No
of
kidding.
R&B and hip hop. And so we
No
always had
kidding.
amazing people either come into shop, um, or doing in stores. By the last store that I managed was like this 18,000 square foot superstore.
Oh,
And
so
so we
you went from literally just working to now managing these massive music stores.
so I went from assistant small store, managing a really high volume small store, to managing, like, the flagship store there, and then I, moved to becoming a buyer. So I was like a regional buyer, which was great. I had to understand what rap was selling in New Orleans versus what was selling in Dallas, and, and again, I loved it. Like, I loved every aspect of that. And it's funny because when people that fast forward to, like, women in tech, and they're like, "How do you get into the industry?" And I was like, "Well, I started in music retail." Not an obvious. There is something to be said about building up your skills when it comes to people, when it comes to problem solving,
Yeah.
right? Um, Operations as a core shows up everywhere, and I was always a strong operator, and retail started that. So I did that for 10 years, moved out to LA.
Mhm.
Chains started shutting down.
Yeah.
And so the company that I was with started closing down regional offices, and so I had a chance to move out here to LA, and then I worked with, Virgin, the the music stores, which was great. Did that for 3 years, and then they started selling iPods, and that was big, and I was like, "Okay, I think it's time."
Yeah.
And then I spent 1 year at, Sony on their DVD distribution. I'm totally dating myself here, but DVD was still big,
Yeah.
was the thing, and I was responsible for, like, inventory management for their Walmart and their Best Buy stores. And talk about an 800-pound gorilla, like, Walmart was,
No, no kidding.
yeah,
No,
and
no kidding.
they iron fist on all their partners, which was probably why where I was fairly political, right? Because it was
Hmm.
you were kind of living and dying by the DVDs, number of DVDs that you sold. Milo and Otis, by the way, number one like DVD 5.99 bin. You had to keep all the stores in stock, all that. Um, but it was an important bridge, though. I think that was a super important bridge for me to go like, okay, physical media into a more still like alive physical media. And that was ultimately the bridge, though, that led me to Netflix because there was a guy there. His name was Jeff, and we were only in a few meetings, but I must have made enough of an impression on him because when I applied for Netflix later, he was already there. And so he's the one that got me, into an interview.
Wow. Holy smokes, that's quite the journey. I didn't expect it to have as many twists and turns as it did. It seems like there's common things that you've taken regardless of what job you've had. If you could summarize maybe an award or two or three, what those common things are that have sustained you throughout your working at, these record and cassette tape shops back in the South to Atlanta to Sony and to Netflix and now to your coaching business. Like, how would
Mhm.
you sum that up?
The through line would always be passion.
Okay.
I left out that there were points in my career where I would realize I kind of hit like maybe not as much of a passion, and I would step back. I would like step back out of a manager position or do a lateral or move over because I needed to have that excitement. I'm really excited about what we get to solve today, and so passion being a really really big part. Career zigzag,
Hmm.
following my heart and saying, okay, what's the thing that feels most authentic to me, most
Hmm.
natural to me? So passion, a really big one. Helping, supporting some like the idea of coaching or developing coaching has always been part of what I've done. Well, when I left Netflix, I said, whatever I do next has to be about generating good,
Oh, I love
whether
that.
through this person or through this product or through this, it has to have a virtuous cycle
Yeah.
that comes from it, a positive. Otherwise, it doesn't. I don't feel good about it. I don't feel like I'm actually contributing.
There's been a lot of anxiety in the world and stress and pressure for a wide variety of reasons. And my hot take is that I think we're at a point now where it's significantly harder to find good in the world than it was, let's just say, 20, 30 years ago. How do you think people that are in this situation can start to look for the good that's out there or start to manifest it or build it? Like, what do you think um, that could be transpired as, if they're sort of feeling all these, pressures and anxieties in the world?
Hmm. It's a great question. It's one that I've been doing a lot of wrestling with, not just the job market, because that in
Right.
itself,
Right.
but if you're a part of a community that's been historically excluded or
Hmm.
that is being openly attacked. So I identify as non-binary trans. And so, obviously with the new administration coming in, it's like 18 executive orders
Yeah.
in the first 2 weeks targeting the trans community. A colleague of mine who also left Netflix, we were talking through this, like, what can we do?
Hmm.
And the idea of allyship actually isn't fully possible right now because all communities are turning inwards to take care of themselves.
Mm.
If you're in the immigrant community, the Latino community, sure, I care about the LGBTQ, but my community's under attack, right?
Hmm.
And so this idea of turning inward and being like, okay, how can we take care of each other? And
Right.
it's not trying to exclude, it's just you get what I'm going through, and we need to take care of each other because things are really hard. And so to go back to what you were saying about how do you find good, I think it's actually turning on and looking right around you. Who's in my community, family, right? Who are the people that are right around me who maybe um, I didn't give as much attention to, or I was missing, right? But it's like, what's in the immediate
Hmm.
that I can either do to support somebody to make them feel, and it's the small acts, right? It's like the very small acts. Um, but I think that's the good. And you're like, how can I help this one person right now?
Yeah. What do you think are some ways? So in a lot of my conversations, we talk about practical things that people can do to maybe organize their day, or start to organize things so that they can be a little bit more efficient in their job search, and they're not feeling like they're spinning their wheels as much. Um, but for individuals that feel like they're not getting anywhere because either nothing's happening, they're not getting calls back, all these things are sort of compounding in a very negative way. Um, how how do you think they could break that habit so that they can start to see that good around them and start to sort of contribute back to the rest of their community? Because I fully agree with you. I think like leaning on your community and not just you know taking or giving per se, but being able to have that good balance so you're not burning yourself out on one end or the other is
Mhm.
exceptionally important. But from your perspective, uh, what does that look like, and how would people do that?
One of the biggest challenges that people have being in this job market is the doom scrolling on LinkedIn, right? The idea that you need to be on
Yes.
LinkedIn because
Yes.
that one opportunity might come up that you may miss, that now the application window is closed.
Yep.
And so it's the first thing they're doing, right? And um, some of the very just like fundamental tactics that I work with clients on doing is establishing a, establishing a routine of, okay, well, we know that the job postings, a lot of them, the new ones come out on like Mondays, maybe Tuesdays. If you're going to do the application, like coming up with that, and then having the discipline to
Hmm.
say, I'm only going to give let's say it's like I'm looking at jobs and now I'm saving them. And I'm going to go apply to them on this time, but I'm doing this. Teaching folks how to create like more intelligent job alerts so that things are being served to you in your
Hmm.
email box versus you know, again, digging and clawing through. Being clear on what could work and what doesn't, but even still putting a
Hmm.
container around it. I think the thing that burns people out most is the chase. It's
Right.
the constant look, and I went through it too when I first left Netflix, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go find something else." And it was like the endless chase, whether it's networking, cold outreach,
Yeah.
everything. Most people are like, they really have to grit their teeth to go through and do, but they're trying to do it all at once
Right.
because it's this like scarcity mindset, which I'm not saying isn't warranted given this like horrific job market right now, particularly if you're in tech entertainment. And burning yourself out is not the thing that helps you find the job, right? Like it's because then you can't show up if you do get a conversation. So it's boundaries, putting a routine to yourself. So and again, I've been guilty of doing that myself and um, having those boundaries and then piecing in the things that are going to be good. So I think like you and I with our schedules, I love taking my daughter to school. I like
Hmm.
picking her up. I'm
Yep.
gonna block that time because, well, one, my daughter's a freshman. It's only gonna be so many more
Hmm.
years that goes away. So I could spend an extra hour doing some marketing for myself as a coach. Is it gonna pay off? I don't know. An hour to go pick up my daughter and hang out, always gonna pay off, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I love that, Trey. The I want to maybe take a step back and talk a little bit about coaching and what that means. I know that there are people out there where their only experience with a coach is in high school or middle school or on a team. But if you had to explain to the everyday person what a coach does relative to your expertise, how would you explain that?
I think there's a few different ways in which a coach shows up for people that I find helpful. I'm I'm here to listen, right? And I work with a coaching platform, Mento, and these businesses will license like Mento as a professional development. And for a manager, midline manager who may be struggling, may be
Hmm.
feeling overwhelmed, I'm as a coach, I'm here to listen.
Okay.
Like sometimes just being able to have that vulnerability of like, this is really hard and I feel like I'm not successful. So the listening and then the support that you're offering, that's often the door that then starts to the curiosity, the questions. Sometimes it's helping people realize, you know what, that imposter syndrome, that's a story that you're telling yourself.
Hmm.
Let's find a way to dial down the volume on that conversation and look at it could also mean these things, right? So perspective, helping people have um, more perspective on what's working, what's not working, and accountability. And it's like the old thing of like you and I are going to sign up for a gym membership together because I'm not gonna leave you hanging at 6 a.m. I could, but then now Um, but that accountability, the thing I always say to people though is like, I'm not accountability like I'm your judge or your teacher. You're not going to get dinged. In fact, I'm never here to judge you. That's I'm here to listen, point out. I'll be direct, compassionately direct with you because I know that's actually what you probably need.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm here to keep you accountable.
How do you work with people that have such diverse personalities? I mean, you go to any executive boardroom, or even let's just even take middle managers, right?
Hmm.
In companies like Netflix, there's such diversity in the experience that these managers have, what they've been taught, what they're learning. As a coach, how do you dial into making sure that you're communicating with them at that right level where they can understand, okay, these are the expectations that I've set for myself. Here's what I'm going to be accountable for. And then be able to follow through with these types of things. Cause that was like for me, I had my first coach when I was at Rebellion Defense, and her name's Kate, and she was fantastic. And she got me through so many things, but we spent probably the first, I don't know, 5 sessions just trying to figure out how the hell I actually talk to people and how the hell I actually produce work, so that she can be effective. But from your experience, like, how do you do that? What's your secret?
I think it's first really getting a sense of what matters to that person.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If I have some leaders who are more tapped into um, the emotion of the team, or they tend to be maybe a bit more of an emotional person. And so, what's the language that they use? What do they show me that they prioritize? Because now I can start to decode if I'm talking to them about setting a goal. Maybe for this person, it's going to be about the the leadership and being an inspirational leader
Okay.
versus being not versus or like a leader who's like I'm about all about results, right? And I inspire through setting a high bar and so it's understanding who are they, who do they want to be,
Mhm.
why do they want to be that, because what's important to them, and then being able to come back and say, okay, if your goal is to create greater understanding, alignment, buy-in from your team about these goals you're setting for them in the new year. Let's talk that through. And so really drawing out what's important. Yeah, I'm repeating myself at this point. What's important for that because otherwise I'm just kind of putting something on somebody,
Right.
right? Like
Right.
I've had some clients I do, like get to know you sessions and some people are like, "Do you have a framework that you work with?" I'm like, I actually don't have like this, go get this book, read it, because I tailor my coaching to what's happening with the person and what they want most, which is a lot like when I was a leader or as an HR business partner. It's coaching, meeting the person where they're at, helping figure out where they want to go. Sometimes it's managing expectations of how realistic that they want to get there, urgency versus um, you know, what's practical.
Right. One of the things, so over the last couple years, I have started going to a therapist, and I never did it. Like, it was always like one of the last things that I would think about.
Mhm.
And recently I've started going, and my wife and I we've gone to couples therapy, and um, I I feel like for me, there's these trigger points of saying, "Holy shit! Like, I need to get my ass to therapy because I got a lot of shit going on. Need to like figure out why the hell this is
Yes.
happening and how to get it fixed." But I feel like for something like coaching, are there certain things that happen in your life where you're like, okay, I need to go get a coach, or what are some of those triggers that happen that people can see, or maybe even like expect and plan for, where they can be proactive at getting a coach?
Mhm. I think one of the most common ones, is folks that have been in the same position or same, like, general sphere for a long time, and they know they're not happy,
Hmm.
and they're still not quite sure, or maybe they don't have the faith that they can make that jump, or they feel like, "I don't exactly know how to do it." One of my first clients, uh, really wanted to go start her own business and felt like she just there was fear. There was fear. And so, helping people see, like, there are things you can do, practical steps, and that we're gonna break it down.
Okay.
Where's the fear coming from? And, like, it's funny that you said about therapy, because I always say there are things that I might suggest to you if you have a therapist, that's a good conversation to go
Oh,
have with your therapist, because that might be feeding this story that you're telling yourself about why you can't do this in your career. Always wanna, like, keep that there, right? And I was like, "Let's talk about the fear of why are you not ready?" To like, "Well, oh, is it money?" Okay, well, let's get real. Like, how do how comfortable are you in knowing your finances, right? Like, and you help people see that things are achievable. But the trigger, to go back to what you're saying, is I'm s- I'm finding myself looped in the same conversation that in the stories that I'm telling myself about, "Oh, I don't love this boss. Oh, I feel like I could never get a job at Netflix because that's I'm not good enough," right? And so as soon as you start to find you're repeating yourself, it's like, okay, is this really like a external issue, or is this, am I stuck at this point?
right. Interesting. What are some practical things that your business does for people? Maybe explain to the listeners, when they sign up to work with you, like what can people expect?
Um, I mean, it's a great question because I work with a few different clients across different reasons. I've got folks who are newer in their career, early career
Hmm.
people, and they're trying to figure out what does it mean to become successful.
Okay.
And so that's where I bring my business expertise of, okay, you want to figure out how to be a more strategic thinker. Let's break that down. You're a new people leader and you aren't comfortable having hard conversations. All right, let's break that down. You are tired of your job, can't afford to leave it, and know that the job market is really hard. All right, let's talk about some boundaries and how you want to manage your energy so that you're not giving so much into something. And it's not like not a quiet quitting thing, but it's like, how do you better manage your energy and a state of acceptance about where you are until this is better. And so it's again, it's trying to get to the real talk of why do you think you are where you are? Is that true? Right? Like there's the saying, feelings are real, not true. So it's like
Hmm.
I have this
Yeah.
feeling that I can't do this. Okay, that's probably not true. So let's put the fear up over here and let's talk about the practical. And so And I would say one of the biggest ones also was just the reason why I loved people leadership is identifying, oh, you have that wisdom spark. Like I can tell
Mm,
you make good decisions, you're thoughtful, or I notice that you're the person that like all your peers go to when they need advice, right? Like identifying the different sparks that exist in people and helping them see it and then helping them think about developing it, right? And so for me, there's also a really important part of being a mirror,
hmm
um, and saying like, you actually are already a strategic thinker. Let me reflect back to you the story you just told me,
mm,
and let me tell you why I see that.
I see.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Trey, I want to ask a fun question, and there isn't a right answer to this, but I would love how you think about this scenario. So, for individuals that are thinking about taking the next step and starting their own business or starting a new endeavor of whatever it would look like, if you had to go back and let's just say you started Netflix again from scratch and you were running it and that was your business, what would be some of the things that you would prioritize on day one, knowing the things you know now when you're starting this new business?
That is such a great question. It's funny because I feel like I can tend to put Netflix on the pedestal
Hmm.
of the smart decisions that they've made. Not perfect, but that have led to now and the things that were within their control versus not. Doing differently, I think, I think that context is hard for me to think about because they had clarity on what their product was. They had clarity on what they would not do
Hmm.
versus what they would do, right?
Hmm.
And they had a very distinct culture. They were clear about who they hired. So I don't know if I would do so much different there. So yeah, maybe that's like maybe a different maybe it's a me starting over again, or I don't know, maybe
Yeah.
reframing the question.
How would you like it for people that want to be entrepreneurs and that want to start their own business? If they came up to you and they said, "Trey, I have this desire to go out and do things on my own, control my own destiny." What would be like some of the first things that you would tell this person so that they can be set up for success being an entrepreneur?
Sure. I mean, the very first practical thing is, do you have the financial runway to give yourself time to build it out? When I first started coaching, I actually had a fairly successful first year because of like the network that I had.
Hmm.
And people are like, "Oh, it always takes at least 2 years to get your business going." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, the head of the curve."
Yeah.
Um, and then year 2 hit, and I was like, "Oh, okay. It does
Yeah.
take a while, right?" And so, and that's one of the biggest stressors is the money. Like, can I keep doing this? And so get clear on your money. Like, how much time would you give yourself? Um, so that that's not something that's taking away from the efforts and the energy to what's your product? Or maybe there's 2 to 3 products. What is that, the niche that you are trying to solve for? What's unique to you that you have to offer? Um, it's that clarity, getting clear. Like I myself have not. Um, I think sometimes I've been having been a generalist, and then kind of this in the one way I've had this like broader, different parts of my career. I could go, oh well, I can go do operations consulting, like Crunchyroll. Super passionate about doing DEI, flooded market. Like I could go do that coaching or all these different things, but if I'm actually trying to go in so many different lanes, then I'm probably not, I get a little tired and not always successful in all the ways I'm going after it. So to say to somebody, be really clear about the thing that you want to do, the like 1 to 2 things, and just like put your focus there so
Hmm.
that you're not spending too much energy into places that might not take you as far.
Yeah, I have that problem too. Like I'm very susceptible to the shiny toy syndrome where you'll read something, you're like, oh yeah, I've got to go and try that out or do these things. And the next thing you know, you've got, 6 projects that are 50% done and none of it's getting 100% of your attention. What do
Yes.
you tell people that are susceptible to that? Which I feel like there's so many tools right now and apps that they're designed specifically to take your attention away. So you don't
Yeah.
have that working, for you in many ways. But what do you tell people that are susceptible to the shiny toy syndrome that need that focus so that they can stay, on the right path to doing those one or two things?
I think it's good to have a friend who is going to anchor you
Mm,
to that,
yeah,
who you're like, "Hey, I've got this," whether it's like a mentor or ex-colleague, somebody that
right.
you're like, "I have this idea," or "Here's 3 or 4 different things I'm thinking of," and you're said to the person, "Be honest with me." Um, I would it's funny, I had this realization last week. I've always been a people person, and
Hmm.
I'm so much happier, more productive, I think, when I'm in collaboration with
Yes.
people, and
Yeah.
so when I'm trying to do these things on my own, sometimes the motivation lags or the overwhelm. I have like a whiteboard that has way too many ideas on it, right? And then, and so, but so having somebody who, it could be a coach, it could be, but having somebody that you want to go, you say, I have this idea, what do you think? Or I think this is really good idea, but I don't know if I'm the person to do it. Like you need a truth teller in your life, I think is really important.
I feel like one of the hardest things about being unemployed that you lose out on initially is you go from these places that have a wide variety of different types of people that think differently to then you by yourself in a room, and the decisions are yours, the time's yours, the deadlines are yours,
Hmm.
and that switch is significantly hard. I know it is hard for me because I
Hmm.
love also like collaborating with people. I love throwing out ideas and seeing what works and what doesn't. The thing that I've hated the most about unemployment is that I've liked every single one of my ideas and nobody has said no to anything, right? Because I'm like, Savan, that's a great idea. I'm gonna go and write that blog post and do those
Yeah.
things. How do you build discipline in people to stay on course? But I think the second part of your what you told me is finding that buddy to sort of keep you on track. How do you find the right buddy to keep you on track? Because I've got buddies throughout my life that have definitely not kept me on track. We've gone out too late, we've done too many things.
Yeah.
But how do you do that?
Um, I think if you're lucky and you've had people that you've worked with before who you've already developed that trusting relationship with, that's kind of the easiest path. I think there's people that you end up kind of stumbling across. I'm a big believer, probably now more than ever, about that the universe puts people in front of you that mean something, and so through just like a random connection, somebody said, "Hey, I think you'd really like this person."
Hmm.
We get on a call, introduction, and we went from like that introduction to talking probably at least every 2 weeks, and all these ideas come out, and now we have this different kind of establishment of ideas that, but with this entrepreneur idea or like lens. So now we can actually say to each other, you know what, that's going to be a heavy lift. Do you
Hmm.
have time for that? Like, you know, even though you're like doing coaching and consulting to a degree, it's still a level of unemployment because you're having to hustle, right? You
Yeah.
gotta like hustle for that work.
Yeah.
So it's sometimes you stumble across people and you just have to trust like, oh, I think there's really cool. Look, even like you and I, right? So like Mike introduced us. I think he feels like there's commonality and shared experiences. And so now we're having this conversation. And who knows where these conversations could go later. And it's like, okay, like let's have that. Um, and I think also being willing to ask for that honesty too. I think like there's a vulnerability of I need you to tell me if this idea sucks, right?
Yeah. I mean, even asking for it is hard sometimes because you're so I know, like for a lot of the ideas I throw out, I'm at least initially, I just feel like they're the best fucking things in the world, and nobody has told me otherwise, and so I just keep running with it. But asking for that is so hard for me, and I'm sure it's so hard for a lot of people. Um, how do you build that muscle to ask for that trust and that honesty from other people, especially people that aren't your family. It gets a little uncomfortable at times,
I think I had the advantage of, again, working at a place that had such a strong feedback culture. It's like that feedback was going to happen whether you asked for it or not. So you might as well ask for it.
right?
You have the chance to kind of to do that. I also think there's an importance of modeling and being willing to do that for others,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things I do in coaching is I'll say, I have I have maybe a controversial question, or I'm having a reaction to this. I have a question that I want to ask you. Can I ask you? It may be a hard question, right? And so people are like, okay, yeah, like ask me the hard question. Doing that, whether it's with a client, but doing that also with friends. So I think it's modeling it, offering that to other people too is really important.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how could people model that? Because I would imagine Netflix had tools and policies and regulations built in so that you can give that feedback in a healthy way, that's sustained over the years. But in organizations outside of Netflix, or maybe in your family or your friend group, like what are some things that people can do so that they are getting that feedback and it is part of their everyday life?
I think what's most important is to invite the feedback, right? Like we used to say that to leaders, like you asking for the feedback
Hmm.
means that you're showing, like, I want to talk about what's not working. Please tell me. And the more you show up for that, show that you can handle it, right? And there's not the defensiveness, there's not the, oh, now I have feedback for you, all of the like bad things that shut down
Right.
feedback.
Right.
I think it's the ability to invite it, take it in, apply it if it, or even if it feels like it's not applicable, to have a grown up, mature conversation about it. Think how little that actually happens in families for the most part. Certainly
Oh,
when
it's
you get,
hard. It's hard.
yeah,
God, I know that's like if you were to ask my wife, one of the things that she thinks is frustrating about living with me is there are times where I'm really, really good about taking in the feedback, and there are times where it's not
la
great.
la la.
Yeah. But it is really fucking hard. So, like,
Yeah.
I wonder if there are best practices and things that organizations, world class organizations, have done so that other people that have never worked there can apply that to their lives.
I think it's important from the get go in any relationship or organization to say feedback, talking about what's not working matters.
Hmm.
It's important. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Humans are wired for connection, so feedback conversation is really hard, but we have to talk about it, right? Because otherwise things don't get fixed, right? And you said like policy regulations. I think like one of the harder parts of Netflix is the expectation was there. And sure, we had like this 360 tool, but it was really kind of on each person
Hmm.
to build up the courage and tolerance to either go give feedback or to ask for feedback. They used to say like feedback is a muscle, which was like kind of cliched at Netflix, but it is true. You do have to like, okay, I'm going to kind of like training for a marathon. I'm gonna go like do my first walk, like my mile walk, and I'm gonna ask for it and I'm gonna start to prove to myself that I can do it. Or as a leader, I'm proving to my team, you can give me feedback. It is okay. Um, so I think it's the expectation. And then as much as you can, are there some good, easy tactics that allow for people to give and receive feedback? Walking, not running, I think is really important too. So there was like a once a year 360, but I think any good team, it's either feedbacks on one-to-ones or teams openly talking about like wins and losses, right?
Right.
So you're again talking about what's not working and then the credibility side too of talking about what is, because if all I ever say to you are these things that you keep fucking up, you're like, "Forget it. You don't see me. You don't see me, so I'm now not going to take in what you say." Um, so I think it's yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that was great. Trey, I wanna talk a little bit about identity. Throughout our conversation, we've touched on it in a bunch of different ways, both from a personal and professional perspective. Um, One of the things that comes up very often in my conversations is this dilemma of people being stuck in an identity. They may
Mm,
be stuck only as a at home dad, or as a mid-level manager, or as a UX designer, or you name it, right? And they feel like they can never get out of it. And it's sort of this perpetual sort of catch 22 where you get let go from a job and you go and try to find that exact same job, or you try to do the same thing, or you go to the same clubs, or you talk to the same people, and it's like this hamster wheel of this identity that just traps you in some ways. If you were to tell people, because I feel like you have gone through many different iterations of this throughout your life, from your time in the South to now, how would you give them the courage, or what piece of advice would you give people to have the courage to do the things necessary if they wanted to change who they are and where they are? And what would that look like?
I think the first thing is getting people in touch with who do they think they are,
Interesting.
right? That do they um
Yeah, tell me more.
I'm sure you've heard the term like masking, right? So people have let me go back. Like when you were talking about at home, I'm this parent. At work, I'm this person to my
Right.
team. With my peers, I'm this person, right? Um, and I think it can be hard actually for people who are like, I have to show up in this way for, and particularly again, if you're from any community, like a historically excluded community, you know what masking is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually like one of the reasons why I love being in music retail is there was a like that diversity of background, diversity of identity was was what you needed and wanted. Um, but so who am I if I'm not this person, if I'm not that person in this sorry, and what's important to me, right? So who would I want to be if I didn't have to worry about um people seeing me differently, like in a bad way? I think people getting people to that self-aware point, um, and going back to what I said before of like the walking before running, if it were, let's see, maybe this happen like, maybe a good scenario is when people become parents and they first-time parents and they're used to working in this place of where the their job is their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they think, and again, at a really fast-growing startup, you think that that is how you're successful because you're there, you're on. And so what does it mean to be a parent? Well, I need to kind of pull back a little bit. Well, I don't think I can. I actually think you can. Let's do like a small step and helping people. Maybe you don't answer Slack after 7 o'clock at night. Well, I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, test it.
Yep.
Give it a give it a test and
Yep.
see, was everything okay? Yeah. Remind me what your job is again. Well, I do sales for fintech. Okay, so it's not open heart surgery? No. Okay, perspective. You don't answer your Slack after
Yeah.
7 o'clock, right? Um, so what do they wanna be? What do they care about? What would they shift about themselves if they could? And then what are some small steps we can do to get there, to start showing you that it's actually safe to start to be more of that person than who you think you're supposed to be right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Especially the perspective part. What are some of the harder things when you're talking to people about this change in perspective as they're trying to better themselves? What are some of the harder things that come up when people are really they're divulging sort of their identity? They're telling you sort of like who they've been, where they want to go. But for people that don't really have the ability to speak to who they are. Like I'll give you an example. My first 5 or 10 therapy sessions were not that great because I just didn't have the language to be able to say, here's how I'm feeling, here's why I'm feeling it, here's and it was like pulling teeth for me to
Mhm.
even get to that point to have the language to be able to speak to something so that I can start to get better. But from a coaching perspective, as you're talking to these people on how to get better, what are some things that you're helping them with so that they can build that language and that muscle to be able to speak to things in an effective way?
You know, I'm trying to I have I've worked with some clients who they have been really successful for a period of time being
Hmm.
very strong, decisive leaders.
Okay.
They know how to get stuff done.
Okay.
Their teams, they're very definitive. They drive hard because, that's what the business wants from them, and that's worked for them up to a point. And now they are at this place where they're realizing that that's not working as much as, say, like being an effective people leader. And so they want to get into, well, I feel like I don't inspire my team, or, whatever the symptoms are, where they realize that they're not fully connecting with their team.
Hmm.
And I have to get them to talk about, okay, where's that, let's say it's that we identify behavior as potentially negative, right? Like a firing off a slack when you're frustrated
Yeah.
with something, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though what you have to say probably has merit, certainly the way it's being delivered in the tone doesn't. And so you can have a client get stuck on, well, but they were wrong about that. And I'm like, we're not debating whether they were actually wrong or not. We're talking about if you really wanted them to understand your perspective.
Hmm.
Do you think there's do you think that worked for you to begin with?
Hmm.
Well, no. Do you think maybe there's a different way? Like, what could those different way be? Why? Like, you have to get people comfortable with understanding that there are things they're doing that aren't great, right? That actually aren't helping themselves. And so when you have somebody who is afraid of being seen as a person who makes mistakes, just worried about perception, I think getting people to kind of set that guard down, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. I love that. Um, Trey, I've got a couple one word questions for you.
Hmm.
You can use one or two words. But would love to get your perspective of this. So, right now, in one word, what do you think leaders need the most right now?
Empathy. I would have said
Why
that
is
word
that?
to you 20 years ago too, like,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ability to put yourself in somebody else's, or recognize that you probably have been in that person's shoes at some point or another. So, you as a leader, what do you wish somebody would have done for you then, right? Empathy.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think 20 years ago, we would have said the same thing. Wonder why we've lacked so much in that, knowing that that is something that, like, in interviews we ask about with some of these some of the questions around trying to determine I don't know, quote unquote soft skills, and knowing that it's such a critical piece to businesses that we're still lacking right now. Why do you think that is the case? Like, I don't know if there's been less focus on empathy, but I also know that we definitely aren't are where we should be. But what are your takes?
I mean, my sense is, if maybe that's a fear of lack of objectivity, right? Like, if I'm empathetic to what you're going through, I
Hmm.
think it's one thing to say I can offer somebody grace, and that's often what can come from empathy. Um, but that doesn't mean that I'm, like, as a leader, say it's perception. That doesn't mean that I'm letting people get away with stuff, right? Or that I don't
Yeah.
expect high performance, right? I think there's a very dictated generational way in which being a leader looks like. And so empathy is one of those soft skills that's seen as a weakness, right? Because it's a job, you show up for your job. I don't frankly need to be worried about how you're feeling, right? Like, it sounds foreign when I'm sure to people who are like post millennial, but it's like my mom was boomer generation. And so the idea that you stay at a company for 10 years was like, that's what you do. That's
Right.
loyalty. And it's like,
right?
No, right? So good. I think there's like still an outgrowing of this dated notion that you have to be like a tough driving boss, and so empathy feels like the opposite end of that spectrum, right?
One of the things I've been thinking about over the last couple of years is being a product manager and leading product teams. There's a lot around metrics and there's a lot around analytics.
Mhm,
Just trying to refine sort of like what's not working. And when it comes to things like empathy and compassion, it's much harder to try to quantify those things in a business. It's much harder to put numbers against those things. And I wonder if there are innovative ways that you've seen that companies are doing this where they can track the progression of these skill sets, because like we were talking about like 20 years ago, it's probably the same damn thing. Like we still need to work on it. So how do we work on it if we don't sort of know where we were and where we need to go?
I don't know if it's so much as innovative or as more as a company's willing to ask these questions to their employees about what's your experience, right? Like, what's the sentiment? What's happening? I work with this other consulting company, and they work with different tools like that are more like culture surveys. And now you're getting into the how you're feeling about the job. How are you feeling about the leadership showing up, right? Like companies have to be willing to say, okay, we're going to ask the questions and we're going to be willing to look at it. And so I don't know if that's so much innovative as actually companies developing a real discipline and commitment to asking, listening, and then acting upon it, and then asking for feedback again of like, and is that working? Um, yeah, it's that willingness to listen. I think a lot of engagement for a long time, Netflix didn't do engagement surveys. I think they felt like it could be really misleading and also because it was like it was anonymous, so which was at odds with this like direct candid feedback culture. But
Interesting.
you do have to like I think create some anonymous space to allow people to say, here's this thing that really isn't working for me. And so I think it's not innovative, it's just a commitment that companies have to make.
Yeah, I would imagine that the different types of feedback have um, different impact and different color, um, based on how the feedback's coming in, when it's coming in. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of variation that you've looked at working in HR of how to take that feedback and how to apply it in productive
Hmm.
ways.
Hmm.
But in your opinion, when is feedback too much feedback, or is there ever a case of where there's too much feedback?
Yeah, I think so. I think if your idea of feedback is to point out every time somebody could do something better, like we used to call them like feedback citations, right? So you're a new employee on my team,
Yeah.
and I think, we're going into meetings together and we're coming out and I'm like going, okay, here's what you could have done better. Here's what you could have done better, right?
Yeah.
And if you're new, right, if you're new, you're like, uh, it's like too much and it's not helpful, right?
Yeah.
Just like if being overly effusive and giving you a ton of positive feedback,
Right. Just
okay,
blowing
great.
smoke. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think it's when do you give feedback when it probably serves the greatest purpose for them, both good and constructive and positive. Feedback for the sake of feedback, which is what used to happen a lot at Netflix. Like, well, I have to give feedback, and I'm like, don't give me fluff
Yeah.
feedback, or
Waste of
don't
time.
give me dated feedback because you couldn't come up with something recent. Like, tell me something real, like right now, that would help me be um, do with like start, stop, continue. Tell me something new I need to do. Tell me something I need to stop doing. And what's something that you like doing that you want to see me keep going on. But make it real. Like make it real.
Second one word question, but what's one word that scares you right now?
I mean, I'll tell you the first word that came to mind, Trump. Like that's the you know, I don't mean to try to go political, but like as a person who has an identity that this administration
Yeah.
directly opposes,
Yeah.
um that's my political answer. D the word I guess the other word that comes up for me is, like, disconnection.
Oh. Interesting.
right? Like
Expand on that.
disconnect.
Yeah.
Well, one of the bigger challenges that I think we're facing with, again, the really hard job market, hard economic times, if there's politics affecting your
Mhm.
community, is and turning inward feels like a survival, but then there is a disconnect that happens, and so in the absence of that connection, the thing we talked about, like empathy, I know, like isolation, maybe that's the word. People become more and more isolated. The umpteen studies that have shown like the effect of the pandemic and
Mhm.
the isolations. Doing your own business can be very isolating,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yep.
So maybe it's not disconnect, maybe it's isolation. Like isolation is a really
Yeah, I've definitely felt that for sure. Last question, Trey, and take as much time as you need to answer this. But let's just say in 15 years, and this podcast is still around, but in 15 years, your daughter stumbles upon our conversation. What is the one thing that you hope she gets out of our conversation today?
that I am a caring and authentic person.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that you got a million likes on this video.
That might matter to her, I don't know. I think independent of all of that, that she sees me as, you know, someone who cares. It would help if she thinks I'm funny too, but, I don't know if I had given enough jokes
I'm
on that.
struggling in that department too, so don't feel too bad. All right, my friend Trey, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I appreciate you and I wish you well. And we'll link your company's URL in the descriptions. And if people need to get a hold of you, we'll put in your business email there as well.
Okay.
But I wish you well, my friend,
Thank
and
you.
Happy New Year.
Thank you, same to you, I appreciate this. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right,
See
take
you
care.
later. All right,
Bye.
bye bye.